All right. Well, good morning, everybody. We are on day 4 of our Stand Up for Grain Safety Week. I am Barb Grove. I am your moderator for the event today. I am the Quality Systems Manager for Central Valley Ag, and I am the past president of the Grain Elevator and Processing Society, or JEEPS. Today's session that you've all logged in for is about critical safety devices, some personal and some those at our facilities that we feel are important and you should feel important that keep you safe every day. So today, just a little cleanup technical work on the front side. If you have any technical issues, you're not hearing or you're not seeing, first check your settings. We all know in this day and age of years of using our Zoom and Teams that sometimes if you have a lot of things up in the background that you might be buffering because you have lost your own bandwidth. But if that doesn't help it, then direct message Salah Isa. You can see him up on the screen right now, but give him a direct message. He just posted there in our chat box for us so that he can try to help you in the background. If for some reason you get kicked off and you can't get back on, then go ahead and email grainsafety2010@gmail.com, and that's over there in the chat box. And somebody is monitoring that and will try to help you, get you a link and get you back on. If you haven't registered for our Friday session, there's still time to do so. So you can use the link that's going to be posted out there in the chat box at standupforgrainsafety.org. And if you haven't floated around the standupforgrainsafety.org website, make sure to do so. There's some great um, resource pages out there, a lot of different topics. Again, a lot of our partners give us those resources to share with you for free. And also, um, we have out there all the videos that have happened this week. All the other sessions are recorded, so they are posted out there on the Stand Up Week videos tab. So there's multiple tabs out there, so go check those out. And today's session will also be posted out there. If you have somebody from your organization that wasn't able to join today, but would really find the information useful, usually after we get it edited and it takes that upload time, it takes about 24 to 48 hours. So just look for that after the fact. Um, Salah, if you would share our sponsor slides one more time. Our learning sessions are brought to you by the Grain Elevator and Processing Society and the Grain Handling Safety Council. And they really wouldn't be possible without all these groups and those of our generous sponsors. We have ADM and the Illinois Fire Service and Rescue that are our sponsors today. But other people who have shared throughout the week and given us some great resources and their time are ADM, the Bartlett Grain Company, Central State Center for Agriculture Safety and Health, or CS Cash, Central Valley Ag, the Grain Elevator and Processing Society, CL Jones Consulting, LLC, Grain and Feed Association of Illinois, Grain Journal, Kansas State University, the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, University of Nebraska Medical Center, Lamar Advertising Company, the National Grain and Feed Association. So let's show your appreciation for all of those groups for sharing with us and giving us of their time and their resources. Also, we want to let you know about what are your rights. Um, Oh, I lost those. So employees are entitled to have a safe and healthy working conditions, fair compensation for all hours worked, and to be able to report unsafe conditions without retaliation. Employers are responsible for providing that safe workplace free of known hazards. And I see, boy, some of you are into the game and you've been engaged all week. So we like to stay engaged. We put things out in the chat box for you to answer. We ask you questions. So go ahead and share with us, if you haven't already, where you are joining from. We love to see the reach that we have. All right. Thank you so much for joining in there. And we also are going to pop up here a quick poll because we want to know how many people might be joining from your facility. We know sometimes people join these as a group, so just tell us how many people are on. We're always interested in how many people we also reach. And while you guys are finishing up that poll, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. So today, again, a little bit of a special treat because we have two people that are going to share their knowledge with us. I'm going to introduce them both up front, and then they will pop on the screen as their turn starts. So first we have Dave Newcomb. And Dave, you can go ahead and open up your camera and come on screen. So Dave has been associated with the University of Illinois Fire Service Institute since 1987 and has taught more than 200 classes. In 2011, Dave was advanced to the Ag Rescue Program Manager and has overseen its growth with additional classes and topics and an expansion of the on-site training in grain bin rescue. Todd Albert is our second speaker, and Todd is a dedicated maintenance engineer for hazard monitoring at ADM, where he plays a key role in maintaining the reliability, safety, and efficiency of the critical safety devices systems. So he's known for his technical expertise and his hands-on problem-solving approach. Todd supports the organization by diagnosing complex mechanical and electrical issues, implementing preventive maintenance strategies, and ensuring compliance with facility and safety standards. Another little tip on Todd is he used to train mixed martial arts, which has helped him in his job because you know what? If he can be locked in a cage with someone, he can handle just about anything. So, welcome, Dave and Todd.
We are, just give me 1 second. We're having now technical difficulty. I'm just gonna have to switch this around till it, okay. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well today. It's been a good week. I thought Monday the kickoff went really well. So today we're going to talk about our safety. Once again, our whole focus of this is that we go to work and we come home and we're able to have a good career and retire and not have a lot of issues after we retire. So one of those things is taking care of ourselves. And we're going to kind of look at a PPE thing from the feet up. We're going to go full ways. It starts with footwear. Okay, this is a cutaway of a nice boot. Okay, the cool part of this is the interesting part, once again, steel toed. All right, then we got a good arch support and all that for comfort, along with the heel. This is just one style of boot. Other work shoes have different soles and different grips. Some of them may be even specific to the environment you have to work in, that there may be specialties. But once again, if you're not comfortable on your feet, you're going to have a real issue of just being able to work productively and to stay safe. Because if you're focused on that, it's distracting. So once again, this is just one start. So we start from the feet up. We know that as we work, if we're in jeans or work clothes or whatever, we don't want anything loose or anything like that. Make sure your belt's tucked in. If you wear a sweatshirt of any kind or anything like that, The strings in the hoodie can be a real issue, dangerous. Had a gentleman that I teach with who had a stepson who was on the farm working, and was working around a hay baler, and the string got caught in a counter shaft and it hung him. So there's hazards out there every day, mechanical hazards, electrical hazards, anything like that. And that hazard doesn't care who you are. Doesn't matter if you're a family member, an employee, the hired hand, a first responder, whatever. That's out there and it can get you. So once again, I call it situational awareness, in that you pay attention to what's going on around you. And if you see something that's going wrong or has the potential to go wrong, you deal with it. Because once again, it's about our safety and our coworker safety and everybody else. So once again, as we work our way up, we've covered this. Another thing we want to look at is respiratory protection, and this is the simplest form right here, a simple N95 mask. Okay, it's a filter mask, and it's used, in dusty environments and things like that. And then once again, it's to protect our lungs, and it's the smart thing to do, and it's cheap. Okay, it's cheap protection for our respiratory tracts, the nose, mouth, all the way down to the lungs. We want to take care of that. Okay, we want to take care of ourselves. They're easy to get, and if you go through a half a dozen in a day, so what? They're not much. You buy them by the dozen. Okay. So once again, protecting our lungs, our respirations. Another thing we want to look at is our hearing protection. We want to protect our ears. Okay. There are many different styles. We've got some old, just a simple set. It looks like headphones, nice cushions, things like that. A little bit older version. Okay. But once again, just goes on your head, your hearing protection. Used to use these a lot when I was in the fire service. We even went to headphones in the cab of the truck with our microphones and that. And it really, when it drowns out the surrounding noise, you can actually hear things better. So once again, earphone style like this, and then we can go into earplugs. So this is a simple device, goes around the back of your neck. You can pop them in when you don't need them. You can pop them out, but they're right there. They're readily available to you. Okay. And then we also have the disposable type. They're one use. You just basically squeeze these, pop them in your ear, and then they expand. Want to protect our hearing. I'm kind of moving things around here as we work. Another thing we want to protect is our hands, and there's a lot of different levels. If we're out working in the garden, a simple cloth, cotton glove, something like that. Leather gloves, once again, if we're working in certain areas for our hand protection, and they're not one size fits all. You're going to need it to fit you, and I need the extra large. But once again, leather, cotton. Here we have a cloth, maybe a nylon, nice and shiny. Good gardening gloves, things like that. We have like a mechanic's glove here, where it's a cloth and it's expandable, but it's got like a neoprene on this side to where it goes in and it gives you grip and it protects you. If you were, my brother was a mechanic. He wore a lot of these whenever he was working, like changing oil or working with fluids, brake fluid, anything like that. A simple way to protect your hands. Just many different versions here, and it's all specific to what you need. You may even get into specialties if you're working in the chemical world. Okay, so you got neoprene gloves. The good part of this is in the packaging, it gives you the list and that tells you what it's rated for and its job purpose. So it needs to be specific. You want to use the right glove for the environment that you're working in. So that's one version. Then we can get into other versions once again, and these are specific to if you're working in the chemical industry, like in the fertilizer business, if you're mixing herbicides and all that, or if you get into anhydrous ammonia, there are different gloves specific to those. Now, we very much want to pay attention to that. We want to use the right style, right glove for the right job, and then there's the right way to wear it. I know when we're working around anhydrous, we put a cuff in it like so. So if any product it doesn't, it gets caught and traps away. But this is really important, once again, for our hands. So just working our way around. Another item we would look at is if you were in a system or depending on your work environment, you would want to have some back support. So if you're lifting, a lot of bending, things like that, this is a device to help support your lower back. And lower back injuries are an issue sometimes in the workplace. A lot of different things can go wrong. This is a simple device, can go real easy. And, they're elastic, they're adjustable, things like that. Another thing we'll go into also is eye protection. We're just working our way around, simple goggles. We got glasses, many shapes and sizes, all different things like that. Okay, we got a whole table full of stuff here. A lot of different options, both some old, some new. But once again, they're out there and it's specific to what you need. Okay. Another thing, if you're working outdoors, sun, I'm a person who has dealt with a lot of skin cancer issues over my life, being outdoors, being a firefighter, working on the farm and that. So sun protection is also an issue. We very much want to use these. It's all about us. We take care of ourselves. As we move on, we've got this, then we go into head protection. So, as simple as a bicycle helmet, if you were riding your bike to work or whatever, safety never stops. We want, even if we're riding this to and from work, critical thing to have. As growing up as a kid, bicycle helmets weren't thought of for a long time, but they are critical and important for our safety. Another thing is just technology and how it's played a role. We have a simple bump cap. All right. It does have an interior harness, a suspension system with a headband that's adjustable along with the straps. And then this is basically just the shell without the interior suspension. Okay. So these have been around for a long time, many different shapes and sizes. This is another one similar to, but it's just a different brim configuration, working outdoors. If it was raining, this kind of helps take the rain away from your shoulders and that. Okay. And then in our newer technology, this was actually just got to see this for the first time myself, but this is a new model that's out, latest model. So we got a really good suspension system in here with the headband. But the real interesting and cool part of this is the attachable components. So you can set this up if you want a full face shield and it just snaps into place. Once again, you can click that in and it's right there, and then it pivots up out of the way. A really nice device, a lot of different options. You wanted to go with partial, you can also set this up. This hooks in like so, but you have, like I said, safety glasses, and they fold up like so out of the way, and then you just fold them down when you need them. But this clicks into this system right here. Really nice, interchangeable. You can set it up whatever situation you're in. It also comes with hearing protection. So this snaps into the side here, and then this folds down when you need it. If you can fold them up out of the way. If you don't need them for a few minutes or whatever situation you're in. So really nice devices, really cool options. You can set it up to however your job is working. And then this device, once again, it's another is a helmet, but this actually incorporates a chin strap. So if you were working at any kind of elevation, you would want these to, you'd want this because situation you were in, especially if you were in a situation in a harness, and you're inverted or something like that, you keep your helmet on. But all these components, the face shields and all that, all fit this helmet also. So that's, once again, taking care of ourselves. Another thing that we would do as we're working in the world and all that is we all carry devices with us. If I, in a certain situation, if I was in a situation or an environment where I had an oxygen issue or I need to monitor my conditions around me, I can carry a monitor. This is a replica 4-gas monitor. Certain situations in the ag world and all that, you may actually have monitors specific to a product. Like if in the grain industry, if they've done where they've fumigated into a bin or something and they've used phosphine or whatever, they would have a monitor specific to that product. Most fire departments in the John Q. Public doesn't have that. It would be specific to the facility usually, but this monitors air, carbon monoxide, lower levels of our LELs for explosive. So once again, a simple, easy device. Before they're used, you have to bump test them, which is basically you turn it on and let it cycle in a clean air, and it does a self-test of all its monitoring, so that you have a working monitor for where you're at. Once again, critical to our safety. If you were in a confined space situation, at least in the rescue world that I come from, There would be a monitor at the opening where you're going into the space. There would then be a second monitor on the rescuers themselves or the employees where they're monitoring at where they're doing the work. And in our world, in my world, is we record those settings and readings on those monitors every 15 minutes. And that's from the start of the entry to the end of the entry. Another thing, and I think this is really critical for our own safety, and it's lockout, tagout. It doesn't necessarily have to do with our PPE, but it is taking care of us. If I'm going into a certain situation, I'm going to lock out the areas that I'm working with. I'm going to lock out the machinery that might be involved. For me in the grain world, grain bin rescue, I'm going to lock out anything that can make the grain move. This is called a HASP. Basically, it goes on a device. You shut the source off. I have a lock and it's lock out, tag out. So I have a lock and I have a tag saying why I've locked it out, put in the device. It's locked in, and then any and all rescuers, if they're in the bin or wherever they're at in the space, everybody puts their lock on. And they don't come out, and you're the only one that carries the key. I think in the world, lockout, tagout saves lives every day. It can be used both personally, you can use it at home. I mean, it's simple as if I was going to change a light switch or something out, I would go out and shut the breaker off. And I would, making sure that things are taken care of for my own safety. Because in this world, how common would it be that someone was out working in a facility or working on the elevator or working at the farm, and they go to, they're loading a truck or something, and something happened, and they went to climb in the bin to see what was going on, and somebody came by and said, hey, we're supposed to be unloading corn, and start flipping switches. We need a barrier so that can't be done. And I don't care, to me, it could be as simple as a heavy duty zip tie with a piece of paper on it that says Dave's in the bin. Do not turn on. Okay. It saves lives every day. And then on another subject, a little bit out of our PPE, but just real general basic uses of a fire extinguisher. Okay. A simple basic unit. Okay. This is an ABC dry chem. The way to remember this, there's 4 classes of fire. This deals with 3 of them. A class A fire is anything that leaves an ash, like wood, paper, things like that. So a class A has an ash. Class B is a flammable liquid. Flammable has the letter B in it. So this is free sort of flammable liquid. And then last would be electrical, class C. C in electrical. So ABC. ABC dry chem, it's a multi-purpose. 1 minute. Okay. So what we want to do is when we do this to operate it, you basically use the acronym PASS. You pull the pin, you aim this at the base of the flames. You don't shoot it up in the top. You put it down at the base, squeeze the trigger, and sweep across the flame. Okay. This has about an 8 to 10 foot reach, so you don't have to be up close. The important part is that it's easy if you were to overrun it and you're shooting the product past the fire, it can come back under you. So our interest here is after I've called 911, after I've got my help on the way, then I make a decision as to whether or not I'm going to fight or flight. And this is a simple way. And this has a plastic valve in it, so this is a one-time use. The other part of it is that if you use it, use the whole thing because it cannot be reused. It is then taken out of service and replaced or reserviced. So you don't just use part of it and hang it back on the shelf. It's a one-time use. So I know this has kind of been a fast overview of a lot of different things. It's important that we take care of our equipment because it's going to take care of us. We want to stay safe. We want to have a long, prosperous career, and we want to have a healthy retirement. And that's our whole focus here. I was, like I said, 35 years in the fire service, and I've been retired the last 15. But on the road teaching. So I very much want to thank you for your time today. I hope that we just hit on some basics. Maybe it's just a fresh reminder, but thanks again for all your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave. And Todd, we'll go ahead and have you start your camera.
Hear me okay?
Yes, and
Okay.
just one moment and Salah will start your slides. All right, you're ready to go, Todd.
Thank you. Again, my name is Todd Albert. I work at ADM. I've been here for 29 years. In the last 12 years, I've been focused on critical safety devices and on hazard monitoring. So you're going to hear me say critical safety devices, CSDs, hazard monitoring, or HAZMON throughout the slide. They're referring to the same thing that I'm going to be talking about today. So next slide, please. So why have critical safety devices? Well, properly functioning CSDs are critical to helping prevent potential catastrophic events at grain handling facilities. By implementing hazard monitoring systems, or CSDs, you can significantly reduce the potential for human error and a safer, more reliable operation. So NFPA 660 provides guidance on the types of monitoring sensors necessary to ensure safe operation. While having the appropriate sensors installed is a critical first step, it's equally important to focus on what comes next. That's inspection and testing of those sensors. So installation alone does not guarantee performance or safety. Regular inspection and functional testing are essential to verify these monitoring devices operate as intended and continue to provide accurate protection over time. And that's the topic I want to explore, with you today. Compliance through installation and assurance through consistent inspection and testing practices. Today, I'm going to share practices and strategies developed throughout the years of hands-on experience with this equipment. Next slide, please. So we'll be discussing various types of equipment monitored by using the CSDs. We're going to take a closer look at the types of sensors installed on equipment, inspection intervals followed to maintain reliability, and then testing procedures used to ensure sensor performance. The equipment we're looking at today will be bucket elevators, open and enclosed belt conveyors, drag conveyors, and dust collectors. And here in the slide, you can see drawings and cutaways from the different equipment. Our goal is to highlight how consistent monitoring, inspection, and testing of these systems will help maintain safe, compliant, and efficient operations. Next slide, please. All right, so bucket elevators. When it comes to bucket elevators, focus should extend beyond the belt itself. It's also essential to monitor all major pulleys, including the head, the boot, and if your bucket elevator does have one, a knee pulley. So to achieve coverage on these, install an alignment sensor and alignment sensors and bearing sensors at each of these locations. Over the last several years, I've found the following schedule to be effective on reliability. So quarterly inspection. Perform a quarterly visual inspection of all the sensors in the seal tank. I'll get into that a little bit later in the slides. And then found twice a year, perform a speed test, function test on your speed sensor. And then annually, I'd ask you to test every sensor on that piece of equipment. And I will add this as well. If you have an alarm on one of your CSDs or your critical safety devices, make sure you go investigate why you had the alarm. Don't just immediately restart the equipment and try to keep restarting. Maintaining this inspection and testing routine helps ensure bucket elevators operate safely and efficiently throughout the year. Next slide, please.
Todd, I'm just going to ask a question here quick since we're there. Somebody asked about explosion sensors for bucket elevators. Just wanted to go back to that point.
They're jumping ahead.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
We'll get to that in a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we'll talk about explosions, suppression, and venting here in a second. So, yes, a good question. Enclosed belt conveyors also utilize a similar sensor setup to that of bucket elevators, but in addition to your speed, your bearings, and your alignment sensors, it's also good to include lug sensors at the tail. So because a rub block or a touch switch, an alignment sensor can't be installed directly at the tail, they can be positioned farther up on the casing to pick up the belt. Since these alignment sensors can't cover the tail pulley, lug sensors can be added at the tail to detect any pulley movement or misalignment, providing an additional layer of protection and early warning capability. This diagram and this configurations allows for effective hazard monitoring on this. Next slide, please. So open belt conveyors, in addition to all the sensors that we just talked about on enclosed belts, it's also important to install pull cord along the conveyor belt. The pull cord setup ensures that personnel have an immediate access to an emergency stop from either side of the conveyor, enhancing overall safety and compliance with best practices for conveyor hazard monitoring. Next. Drag conveyors, I would say the most important sensor on here is a slack chain switch. If you cannot install a slack chain switch due to design, a speed sensor or a lid switch can also effectively work in this system. Next slide, please. All right, dust systems. The CSDs we're looking at there are bearing sensors on the fans, plug sensors, and explosion venting or suppression. If you have a dirty air fan, which is the fan before the dust filter, I would recommend you have bearings on that fan or bearing sensors on that fan. If you have a clean air fan, I would say having bearing sensors on the fan bearings is more of a best practice. All right, next. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the sensors themselves. If you're unfamiliar with the various types of sensors used in the monitoring systems, I've outlined them below for reference. And they did bring up the question about explosion, suppression, and venting. I did take that out of here, I'm sorry. We can talk offline about that if you want. But I'll go through these. The first picture we have is a bearing temperature probe style sensor. That number 2 is a lug style temperature sensor. 3, we have different types of alignment sensors. That 3.1 is a touch switch or a touch sensor. And then 3.2 is a brass rub block. 4 is a plug sensor, and that one in the picture is a diaphragm style plug sensor. And then 5, we have a speed sensor or a slow down sensor. Next slide. All right, bearing temperature sensors. They're designed to detect or monitor heat within the bearing. In this bottom, say left picture, you'll see what I call a button style bearing temperature sensor. Technology has since resulted in additional options. For example, on the far right, you have a adjustable depth probe sensor. I believe that receives a faster reaction time on temperature increase. It's closer to the bearing race. And then in the middle, you have a lug style temperature sensor. This is an older picture of a lug sensor, but some newer ones have adjustable depth probes that actually go in that lug sensor, and I feel that's a great advancement in this. All right, next slide. So here we're just talking about how to set the adjustable depth bearing probe sensor in your bearing. The easiest way to do this is insert the probe all the way until it hits the outer race of the bearing, and then just back that probe back out 1/8 of an inch away from that race, and then tighten it down. Make sure it's snug. I know in this picture, we have the actual torque settings for this, but hand tight's good. Just pull on it, make sure it's not loose. If you do not tighten those up, then you can get grease from the grease zerk shooting back up into your seal tight and making a mess. Next slide, please. So quarterly visual inspection of bearing temperatures and lug sensors. Let's say, are bearing temperature sensors properly mounted to a bearing or surface? Are the temperature sensors easily accessed for periodic inspection? I can't say this enough. If you have, let's say, a tail of a high roller, or you have a head of a bucket elevator that's way out in the middle of nowhere, and you have to get out there using a harness, it's not safe. Let's get some type of platform or scaffolding so we keep our people safe out there. Do the temperature sensors show signs of wear? Just making sure it's not worn. Do they have dirt and debris built up around the mounting points? Again, I've run into the problems where I've seen dirt and debris built up around the bearing and the actual mounting point, which acts like a winter coat. So if you remove all that, that bearing helps breathe more. And it keeps your bearing cooler and results in a lower temperature on your sensors. Are the temperature sensors set at the correct depth on the bearings? That's, again, we're talking about that 1/8 inch depth, or 1/8 inch away from the race. Are they mounted rigid enough to withstand pressure? Are the conduit systems in all boxes mounted securely, all covers installed properly throughout to alleviate any possibility of water entry in the system? So that's the biggest thing, is water entry into your conduit, your seal tight. If you get that in there, and I have been to a lot of facilities that get really cold in the winter. If you have water in your conduit, it's going to freeze and it's going to pull those wires, and that's where it becomes a weak link. These systems are great to use, great to keep us safe, but if you get water in that system, you're going to have problems. So make sure they're sealed up. And that's the next one on 8 and 9. Looking at your seal tight and seal tight fittings. Are they broken? Or are they properly tightened? We want to make sure that everything's tightened and not broken and have holes in them. Next slide. Okay, testing a bearing temperature sensor or lug sensor. I will keep this short and sweet for an annual test. If you have a 4B system, they have a 4B ADB tester that you can put your probe in, test it. You can run it up to the temperature, watch the alarm, shut it down. If you have a CMC system or an AGI system, they make a CMC easy test. I don't know if you can see that or not with it being dark. Same thing, you can use this to test your sensors. And then if you have Electro Sensor, a Hazard Pro system, they have a Hazard Pro Insight tool. These are all great tools. If there's others out there that has a tool that you can actually test, you can use that sensor tester as well. If they do not make one, you can use Freeze Spray. Freeze Spray will let you know where the location's at of that sensor, but it actually won't show any shutdown. So I highly recommend you being out in the field and testing that sensor to make sure that it does get an alarm and shut down. Also, I would say, please do not use a heat gun or a torch out there to test these sensors. Can't say that enough. Doing so could create additional safety risk out in the field. Don't produce heat out there in the field just to test your sensors. Let's use our testers or use Freeze Spray. Next picture, please. All right, click it one more time. There you go. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures of acceptable and unacceptable. On the right, you see acceptable. If you stare at a picture long enough, we might find something wrong. But the way that bearing sensor is installed looks secure. From the picture, it looks like seal tight's good. Looks like everything's fitted in there good. Looks nice. Unacceptable. On that top picture on the left, fitting not secure on the grease. So if you look at that, that's where I talked about if you didn't tighten down that fitting on the bearing sensor, You could get grease sent back up through your seal tight into either your field connection boxes or junction boxes, makes a mess. So you don't want that. Make sure it's tight. And then on the bottom, unacceptable picture, seal tight not connected. So you could get water into the seal tight, water into that bearing housing. You can get dust in there, and that's all stuff you don't want in your bearing. And then also we potentially could have that probe not set at the correct depth. So stuff to look for on your visual inspections as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, getting into alignment sensors, touch sensors. Touch sensors are designed to detect misalignment of the belt or pulley, which activates a shutdown after 15 seconds of continuous contact. Quarterly inspection on this. Our alignment sensors probably mounted to pick up belt and pulley shift. Are they easily accessed? Do they show signs of wear or frequent contact with the belt? So I'm going to ask, when you do inspections of these touch sensors, that you do lock out that piece of equipment. Just like Dave said earlier today, lock that out. I don't feel it's safe that you keep that piece of equipment running or have product on it and you pull an alignment sensor out to inspect it. There's potential for someone to get hurt or get injured. We don't want that. So make sure that, make sure everything's locked out. The alignment sensor shows signs of wear or frequent contact. So this touch sensor, I don't know if you can see it here. This one has a little bit of a groove on it right there. That's got a groove on there. I would look at replacing this. Well, this one, it's also missing the knob on the back. Yeah, if you see that on a touch sensor, I'd replace that. We want to make sure that's first point of contact, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We want to make sure it's rigid enough to withstand pressure from that belt or pulley coming over. We want to make sure all that conduit and all covers are sealed up, making sure we don't get water in the system again. And again, seal tight fittings, making sure they're properly tightened and nothing's broken on there. Next slide, please. All right, testing the touch sensor. Easy way to test this. Again, the knob is missing on this. It's hard to see. There should be a knob there, and there is a little red light. Of course, this one's not hooked up anymore. So to test this, you would not have product on your equipment, but you'd have that piece of equipment running. You'll see that little red light on there. You would turn that knob until you see the red light go off. Once that red light goes off, it initiates your alarm or your shutdown. And once that's done, you can turn that knob until you see that little red light turn back on, and then you're good to go. You can move on to the next sensor. Next slide, please. All right, so again, we got some acceptable pictures and unacceptable. Here in this picture, you can see a touch on the acceptable side, touch sensor that looks to be acceptable. One thing to keep in mind is the length of the self-tapping screws that are in there. They need to be shorter than the puck. And here is an unacceptable. If you look on that unacceptable side on the left of the picture, there is 5 shims in that puck and loosened bolts on that. Rule of thumb is if you have more than 3 shims on your touch sensor sticking it out, you are most likely not the first point of contact. When I say the first point of contact, I mean if the belt or pulley misaligns, will that sensor be the first thing that belt or pulley touches? You don't want the belt or pulley to touch anything else first. So in that picture, you see 5 shims on there. That's never going to rub. It's going to have to go outside that bonnet or that case, that belt is going to have to go outside that bonnet or casing and rub that touch sensor before it ever alarms. So if you see something like that, address it immediately. Next slide, please. All right, rub blocks. Rub blocks are designed to detect misalignment from the belt or pulley by temperature. So quarterly visual inspection, our alignment sensors, your rub blocks mounted properly to pick up belt and pulley shift. Our alignment sensors easily accessed. Again, we don't want to have somebody climbing out on something and making them unsafe. We want an actual structure or a platform they can work off of. Do the alignment sensors show signs of wear from frequent contact with the belt? Again, just like Dave said earlier today, lock that piece of equipment out before you start pulling these rub blocks out and looking at them. We don't want you to have a potential to be injured with that. So when you look at that, if you see wear, if you can see that or not, you can see this rub block has been rotated once you've had a little bit of a wear mark here. Once they've had either the alarm or they did a quarterly visual inspection, they rotated it and used the other side, and then this side has a very deep groove. Once it's got that deep of a groove, replace the rub block. Some rub blocks, you can flip them, but I would recommend you not to flip them, because if you have that big of a groove back there and you flipped it, you could get dirt and debris built up behind there. And if you did have a hard belt or pulley rub, then you could potentially have grain dust behind there. And then that grain dust could be your first smolder point there. And we don't want that. So rotate them, but do not flip them. So yeah, and then the rest of it's just like all the other slides, making sure they're rigid enough, making sure you're sealed tight and all your connections are tight and nothing's open or broken. We can go to the next slide now. Annual test of a rub block. Again, we're going to keep this easy. If you have 4B, they have an ADB tester. If you have CMC or AGI, use their Easy Tester. If you have ElectroSense or Hazard Pro, use their Insight tool. Great tools. And if you don't have a system that can use one of these, use your freeze spray. Again, do not go out there with a torch or a heat gun and do this. We're messing with grain dust here. We don't want anything to smolder or catch fire or create an event. Let's keep you guys safe. All right, next slide, please. All right, so some more pictures. We have unacceptable and acceptable. I like to say rub blocks tell me a story. So here you can see the two pics on the left of unacceptable. These rub blocks show misalignment. They've rotated them once already before and it's had a misalignment again. So that shows me belt misalignment. We need to track the belt. That unacceptable top right picture shows a nick on that rub block. So that tells me you've had a splice that's sticking out too far from your belt and it's come by and just hitting it when it comes by on that rub block. So it's probably making a nick or a tick sound out there in the field, and it's causing damage to your sensor and it's potentially causing damage to your splice in your belt. The bottom unacceptable picture has that little number 2 on it. This is from grain wear from a very, very long time. So any of these pictures like that, you see that, you want to replace these sensors. Acceptable side, both of these pictures show a new rub block there. No wearing on it, no grooves. And that one in the, say, the top left picture of acceptable looks like it's in a new belt conveyor, new high roller. Looks to be the first point of contact from here. Looks like a good install. Next slide. All right, speed sensors. Speed sensors are designed to detect belt slippage. At 20% slowdown or 80% of normal operating speed, your equipment must shut down. It is also good practice to have an alarm at 10% to allow operators to potentially address slippage. Another thing to add for speeds for quarterly visual inspection is to ensure the speed sensor is mounted to a non-driven shaft. We don't want the speed sensor directly across from a motor because it's not going to give us that belt slippage. Next slide. Again, and you see the pictures on here. If we're doing a semi-annual test on this, I would like to see you guys, if you have 4B, they make a 4B Speedmaster with Pulse Pilot test unit. Use that if you have 4B. Again, the CMC or AGI, they have the easy test that tests all their sensors. And Electro Sensor has their Hazard Pro Insight tool. You can use all these. If not, there's some that's you can just do a 0-speed test by removing the sensor, but I'd like to see that actual 80% shutdown. That way you can prove that it does shut down. Again, I like to see the testing frequency set to 2 times a year on these, on the speeds. So next slide. Plug switches. Plug switches are designed to detect a plug condition of product and prevent damage to equipment. So biggest takeaway on a plug switch visual inspection, making sure they're easily accessible. Most plug switches on bucket elevators tend to be on chutes in way far out of the way areas. Again, if it's not easily accessed, let's make sure we have some type of a platform, or if we have scaffolding that we can get to them. We don't want anybody climbing out there to just visually inspect it. Let's make sure they're safe. Next slide. All right. Annual inspection of a plug sensor. Here in this picture on the bottom right, we have a picture of a diaphragm style plug sensor. The best way to do that is remove the inside screws. If you look at those, it's hard to see in this picture, there'll be outside screws, and then there's going to be inside screws for those. Those outside screws hold down a boot or a cover over that chute or the spout, and the inside screws just hold in the actual diaphragm switch. So remove the inside screws, and then once you have that, activate, just depress it, and it's just a limit switch in there basically, or type of switch. Once that activates, it should be an immediate shutdown. All right, next slide. Okay, so I know I've ran through 1,000-foot view of many different slides, but there'll be time for questions, and if not, we can talk afterwards. But routine testing like this ensures that each component of the HAZMON or CSDs are functioning as intended. Verifying proper sensor response not only confirms system reliability, but also helps identify potential issues before they lead to safety risks or unplanned downtime. So to wrap it up, HAZMON systems or CSDs are your last line of defense to prevent potential catastrophic events. By implementing HAZMON systems, you will significantly reduce the potential for human error and ensure a safer, more reliable operation. While these CSDs and these HAZMON systems serve as the last line of defense, the biggest key here is proper maintenance remains essential to preventing these issues. That should be it. Next slide. That's all I have. Any questions?
So yes, we do have multiple questions, and if I could have David come back on camera, Dave Newcomb, and we will go through the different questions that I have for both of you. Since Todd, you are on screen right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask the questions that I have focused on you. And David, as you come on, I will ask the ones that I've seen for you.
Yeah, I felt like I was a squirrel. I kept seeing things different pop up, like, oh, what's that? Pay attention to your slides, Todd.
Yeah. So one of the questions, and there was actually a lot of comments and a lot of things that people were given a few of their pointers on. But what is the best guidance for testing temperature sensors And their comment was they used to emulate it with a tester, but that doesn't check the sensor itself, just the programming. So we're currently using a hot water method, but that's not perfect. So there's
Okay.
some different comments about, using kind of the dust can spray and freezing it. But does that actually check the upper limits?
Yeah.
So
So
again,
if
a little guidance.
Yeah, so if they're asking about emulating, then they're probably using the CMC or the AGI Easy Tester. So you can emulate the sensor with that, which I call it steals the identity of that sensor, and it just goes back to the system and says it hits a temperature set point and gets the alarm or shutdown. With that tool, there's other functions of this tool besides just raising the temperature. You can actually test that sensor itself, and it will read if it's good or bad. It's a good little tool to use. So yeah, I'd just say look into that Easy Tester some more. You can provide more functionality with it. And if they have any more questions, they can reach out to me, or they could reach out to their vendor as well, and they could walk them through that. So
Okay.
lots of extra ways. I'm glad they're using like a hot water instead of saying we're out here using a blowtorch around grain dust. So
right.
Oops.
yes.
And for Todd, if anybody didn't see, Catherine had posted Todd's email address out in the chat. Might just have to scroll through it quick because he has graciously said, yes, we can share it for those type of questions that maybe are best not served online or maybe we don't get to. So thank you for that, Todd. Dave, so how do they dispose of old or used fire extinguishers? What's that best way to go about that?
I would find, usually there are companies who service them, and I would take them to the companies. There's dealerships out there around the state and around the country who, if you have extinguishers to be serviced, they can fix them. And then I would take them to them to have them disposed of.
Okay, and there were a few comments, hey, even just reach out to your fire department. They may be able to give guidance.
Yes, yes.
And also somebody asked, oh, what do you feel about bump caps?
That's all it is. It's something that protects you from just something that's falling. It's not they do have minimal ratings in that, but it is a level of protection. I consider it maybe not minimum, but it's not a impact. It is impact resistant to a point, but it's, anything on your head's better than nothing.
Right. Yep. Agree. I think I've seen a lot of companies maybe use the bump caps more as a tour group. Operation may have been suspended with things running and they're giving a tour, so they put one on. Because I tell you what, as a tall person, I've hit my head on many a thing walking across the scaffolding over a rail car and forget that the fall protection is there. So yeah, hard hats definitely.
Yes.
Some people don't like them, but they're there to protect this. So
Yes.
if you don't have your head protected, you've got nothing else.
Yeah, it starts at the top because that's going to be your first impact point.
That's right. So Todd, ADM is a very large company. So if somebody runs a small co-op with a small amount of employees, what do you recommend in upkeep and maintenance on the CSDs, just with the small size of staff that they have?
So with that, I would say it depends on the size. If they can't get someone to take ownership of that, let's say they appoint a person there and say, okay, you take care of all the CSDs, whether it's quarterly visual inspections or your annually test. I would look at reaching out to that vendor specific to that CSD. And if they themselves, the company doesn't have someone that goes out and does a routine checks for you, maybe they could reach out to a contractor as well that's trained and certified with those CSDs, and they can do those visual inspections and those testings. I won't say names out there, but there's a lot of contractors out in the grain industry that can do that for you. So,
Okay, I was just making sure I didn't miss something. Also, Todd, um, how far should the sensor go inside the casing for proper reading in screw conveyors for plug sensors and temperature sensors, for thermal screws?
Thermal screws, it depends. It sounds like they talked about a couple different things on temperature sensors or plug sensors. I would have like a plug sensor or switch on the chute where the product isn't hitting it. I would keep that out of the way, but far enough down where if product started to build up, it would shut down the equipment before it actually gets into the screw or auger. Each one of those will be a different scenario. You'll have to look at it on a case by case situation.
Okay.
They could probably talk to me offline.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And Catherine has shared that. And as well, for you, Dave, Catherine has shared the contact information at agriculture or rescue programs. So Dave, you talked about ratings for gloves, where to find on the packaging, what gloves should be used for what. So what about hearing protection? How do we know if the hearing protection is appropriate for the job?
I would look at manufacturers' recommendations. I imagine it would have to do with I imagine there would be measurements in sound levels, and you would have to have the appropriate level to protect you from that. I would just, I guess, research into what's available out there and I imagine there's rated at what level. There's different levels, and kind of swinging bat here, but I don't have a really good answer on that one. You just have to look at the ratings on them and see what you have, because imagine with headphones versus earplugs, there's different levels to that. So just be
Right.
cautious and evaluate them.
Okay. Hey, Todd, so can all sensors be tested with equipment running?
Yes, so I prefer to have the sensors tested with equipment running, but not have product on the equipment.
Okay.
So run it empty, because if not, I've been on the other end of that, and the other end is a shovel and scooping all the grain and product out of there. And you don't want to do that. That's not fun. So done that a lot in my life. So make sure there's no product on it, and make sure the equipment's empty but running. I like to see the actual equipment shut down. You can prove that your sensors are working properly.
And also, do you feel there's potential for messing up the system by pulling probe sensors to hot water test them, potentially not getting them back in the right position?
Actually, I would say that there is a potential for that. It just depends on the person doing the installs. The biggest thing I would say on there, right where the sensors are at, I've seen this on several of my jobs, is I'm not a big fan of 90-degree elbows on your sensors for your seal tight, because I wish I had a sensor in here right now, because when you have a 90 on there, besides a 45 or a straight fitting, you have to twist that wire basically while you screw that 90 down, and you could potentially damage that. If you're doing those inspections all the time and you have 90s on there, that wire can become frayed inside there, and that could potentially cause you damage. From the actual testing of the sensor, though, I don't see there would be any issue with actually testing it and making sure it works, other than having improperly installed.
Okay. And Catherine just posted in the chat a PDF format of critical safety devices, and I know there have been some questions in there about being able to get that. And I know we are working on, Catherine, thank you very much, is working on behind the scenes posting some of the specific slides as more of a checklist or graph type form that Todd showed us today. And we will post those out on the Stand Up for Grain Safety website. under resources for this session, and any other resources that Dave may have for us. We will be sure to post those as resources. Again, the recording of today should be posted again within 24 to 48 hours, so people can go back and review it. And again, we have a PDF of today. So Dave, is an N95 mask considered a respirator? Is fit testing required?
No.
No. Yeah. Well, come on, Dave. I say that to my kids. I need a little bit more than one word.
It's not a rated respirator. It is a it's a dust protection. So
Right.
it's minimum level, but it does have a nose clip to fit to your nose to make it contoured to give you somewhat of a seal, but there is not a fit testing process for that.
Okay, good.
But there is 2 straps on it, and use both straps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Proper
I think-
fitting, use all the devices.
Thank you for that. I don't see any other questions. And Catherine, yes, we know you are too short to bump your head. So, low hanging fruit. And then Audra, thank you for your comment. And N95 is considered a filtering face piece respirator by OSHA. And it said they would require it fit testing. I would assume again where you are using them. So it depends on, again, what kind of program you are under and what your use is. So James again posted regulatory on that. Again, I think for everything that you showed us, Dave, even Todd, there's regulation on all of it. You have to know what type of plan you are under and what your use is. PPE is always about use. Safety devices is about use. I know our company goes through, our safety directors go through each location and assess where those hazards and what type of PPE is to be used in the different situations. So I think that's always a great thing for every company to be doing.
And follow the manufacturer's recommendations.
There you go. Yes, one more. Let's see. I can't get bottom. Oh, so I think that's the last I see of the Q&A. So I appreciate everybody being out there today. If you have seen again in the chat box, there's a certificate for today's individual learning session. And also you go out to standupforgrainsafety.org and recognize your participation. And that has a few extra questions out there to say, hey, what maybe has your company done? There will be poll that pops up or should when you leave, and we're kind of asking you, what else do you want to hear from us as we work with our different sponsors and our partners to create free training for everybody? What is it that you want to see as we work on things? So Brian Grimm posted a great little example on how to fit test for us. Thank you. You can still register for tomorrow, and it is about, hey, safety communications. What is it to have effective communication in your safety training? So if you haven't signed up for that, go out to standupforgrainsafety.org, or you can use the link you used today will get you into that tomorrow. So again, recognize your participation and be sure to utilize the survey that comes up here as soon as you end today. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dave, for sharing your information with us and giving us your time. Great information. Thank you. Thank you for everybody joining. Have a great Thursday and stay safe out there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you both, David and Todd. And Todd, there was a question about how you tuck in your beard around moving equipment.
Yeah. Make sure If there's rotating equipment, that beard's not coming by it.
That's very good. Oh, there's another example from Brian on, oh, I guess you mentioned it earlier on a video of how to do a fit test for N95.
Yes.
And Sala joined us. We want to thank him for always operating our Zoom effectively. So
Yes.
we are going to Florian, thank you for joining us from Bavaria, Germany. You had a lot of good comments. I don't know what time it is there, but it's probably your bedtime. Anyway, we're going to end today's session and we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow morning for our last session of the week.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you all.
Bye.